Let's get some analysis then. We are now joined via Zoom by Political Analyst Tessa Dooms to weigh in on the economic freedom fighters' role and impact as one of the main opposition parties in South Africa and the provincial conference that is to conclude in the Northwest. A very good afternoon to you, Tessa. Thanks very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start here. Let's talk about the EFF's leadership and the direction that the party is taking or perhaps has taken in South African politics. And maybe we can also zoom in specifically on this province in the Northwest, where they are the official opposition in that province, and some of the issues that they raise that no doubt would be issues that are raised in the Northwest, things like Marikana, for example.
Yes, it's worth noting that the Northwest had a big role to play in the formation of the EFF right in the beginning, with Julius Malema and other leaders having a very vocal role in highlighting some of the issues that happened just in the wake of the Marikana massacre. And we also know that a lot of the prominent leaders who went into the first parliament for the EFF came from the Marikana community and area. And so the party has had a strong footprint in the Northwest, and the ability to be the official opposition in that province is a testament to that. I think, it's always good to think about where the EFF has come throughout the years. I think the EFF itself makes a point of saying that very few people thought that the party would last, or that it would grow. And we have seen a steady growth of the party in terms of its electoral support. It's now seeming that if you're looking at the 2021 elections, that they may be hitting a lull in terms of the electoral support. And I think that's kicked them into a very different gear. This year, we're not only seeing the EFF going into their provincial conferences, but we've also seen the EFF hosting, I think, probably, more rallies than I've seen them host in a short space of time. Yeah. From, events that are national events to specific events around the ideological heroes that they put forward in the EFF. You're seeing a lot of rallies, you're seeing a lot of lectures, and you're seeing a lot of mobilization. They've started the 1 million member campaign. And so I think the EFF is making a very clear statement about 2024, that they're not going to settle for being a 10% party, but they're going to work the ground and try and work towards building the structures on the ground that I think they've not always been as strong at building.
Yeah, I want to continue talking on what you call hitting a lull in terms of electoral support. What can that be attributed to? I was thinking about the fact that when EFF came out in the beginning, it was talking about land, and they were talking about redistribution of land and getting the land back. And it seems as though that hasn't been a major sort of issue for the EFF now these days, and that they're seeing themselves more at the moment as people who expose wrongdoings or people that are trying to hold government accountable. But one wonders if they have their own thing that they still sort of stand for. And is there maybe a problem in terms of moving forward on this issue of land? Because it seems it's something that they're no longer really discussing as they used to.
I think there are a number of factors. One of them is, of course, the question about their relevance at particular moments. I think the Jacob Zuma presidency, they had a strong relevance in the ways in which that they contributed to calling out that administration, and that has helped them with their visibility and helped with a strong sense of messaging. But I think you're right. In terms of the EFF's 7 key pillars, we haven't necessarily seen as much traction on all of those pillars over the years as they probably would have liked. The land question has probably been the strongest of their pillars that they've been able to really make their mark on. But really, the rest of the pillars, there hasn't been as strong a sense of messaging that is particular to the EFF. We can talk about jobs and economic transformation, but really, those are things that all parties are going to talk about in equal effect. Probably one of the other key messages that the EFF have become known for is one of the most contentious issues in the country right now, which is their stance on Pan-Africanism and immigration. And I think that has definitely played a role in some of its own internal party members being conflicted about where they stand on those issues. You hear EFF members having sympathies with points of views around migration that the EFF hasn't traditionally held. We've seen the EFF start to talk about migration in different ways that might actually disgruntle people who are very firm on the views that the EFF have held around a borderless Africa, for example. So I think there's been some confusing messaging around one of their strong points that they've had in society. But I think the bigger issue for the EFF is not linked to the way they show up in society in terms of messaging and at the national stage, and has been more about the ability to grow structures and ensure that those structures are strong and the membership is growing on the ground. Again, that's why you're seeing this drive towards the Million Member campaign. Yeah. We've known that over the years, we've seen either regional structures or provincial structures of the EFF being disbanded, coming into disrepute, and really a need to work on that, a need to work on making sure that the structures are strong on the ground is something that the EFF seems to be focusing their attention on. Because, the central leadership can be as strong as it wants to be, but if in communities, the EFF is not seen as a strong, visible presence in those societies, and the leaders that are there are not reflective of the ideals of those societies, are not working as hard or as effectively as possible, then there are always going to be rotations in and out of membership, people not feeling like they have a long-term relationship with the EFF, and then you see that the structures are not holding, and then people don't come and retain their support over time, even if new members join.
Yeah, it's as though you anticipated my next question, in fact, and I want to just talk about the first half of what you were talking about, where you were talking about key messages of the EFF. I want to talk about the importance, or rather how much of an impact this issue on Pan-Africanism, immigration, migration, where the EFF stands on that, how much it would impact them in terms of electoral support. And I suppose it doesn't help the fact that you've got, it's not a party, but the movement like Dudula and certain political parties like Herman Mashaba's parties who have had very strong views on immigration, on migration that are opposite to what the EFF is saying. Will that significantly impact the EFF going forward when it comes to that level of electoral support? Because South Africans do have clear stances on where they are on the issue of migration.
I don't think that South Africans have as clear stances as we think on the issue of migration. I don't think we're having substantive debates around the issue of migration. And so we have a lot of popular rhetoric, and people's disgruntlement may be clear. And people's sense of frustration around the issue may be clear, but I don't know that we know what the positions of the majority of people in the country are when it comes to how we should address migration. But on the ways in which it affects the EFF, Julius Malema has been known to say on a few occasions that this is something they care about deeply, a Pan-Africanist future for the continent and for the country, and that if people don't agree with that and they don't agree with seeing other Africans as legitimate stakeholders in our country and our democracy, that the EFF is willing to lose votes on that. They may have to test that theory in 2024 if they come out with a strong stance, as you're starting to see them do in the likes of Katlehong, where they're saying, we're willing to take to the streets and confront the Dudulas of the world on this issue. I think they're going to have to test the theory about whether or not, if we find that there's a groundswell of people who are willing to withdraw their support from the EFF on this issue, if they're going to stand firm on principle rather than pander to votes that they may lose.
All right, Tessa, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks very much for joining us yet again here on SABC News.